Hello, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I know. Good to see you, too. We have a lot of information that we were hoping for on yesterday's show. Wilmer Hutchins had the school shooting, and you know how things are so fluid because it happened less than an hour before the James Show started yesterday, and we were actually going back and forth between live coverage and whatnot. And so let's nail down the things that we were hoping we would know in the first 24 hours that we do know. Number one is who did this and why. We did not have the guy in custody by the end of the show yesterday, so I was hoping to be able to pass that along with you. We didn't know his identity. We were told that the police were pursuing who they thought was the suspect. You know, eyewitnesses probably nailed him immediately. They just didn't tell us. Well, he's been arrested. He turned himself in around 9 o'clock last night. WFAA has the report.
I'm Kara Sewell, and I want to get right to new video just in, recorded overnight following the Wilmer Hutchins High School shooting. This is the suspect, 17-year-old Tracy Haynes Jr., as he was booked into the Dallas County Jail overnight. Haynes is charged with aggravated assault, mass shooting, according to the arrest warrant affidavit obtained by WFAA. Now, according to that affidavit, he was let into Wilmer Hutchins High School yesterday by another student before he began firing at students, shooting one at point-blank range.
Okay, so here's what you didn't see. The video, I don't know what I was expecting, but it looks like a child. It's so sad. It reminds me a lot of what happened at the Frisco track meet just 2 weeks ago. The guy arrested doesn't even look like an adult. Looks like someone that, if I saw him walking down the street, I'd offer him a ride home. Like, hey, you need help? You know where your mom's at? Are you allowed to be here? And try to take a life. The other guy did take a life. This guy squeezing off rounds at his fellow students there. Looks like a child. Yikes, that's ugly. Another question that you and I were wondering yesterday. What's his motivation? Not so sure on that, right, WFAA?
The motivation or circumstances that led to the shooting, still not clear, but we know 3 boys, ages ranging from 15 to 18, were shot, and a 4th was grazed by a bullet. All 4 were hospitalized, with at least 1 that was in serious condition.
A lot of people were asking me yesterday. I was even wondering aloud on the James Show, how did he get the gun in? They have metal detectors. They have the clear backpack rule. Apparently, someone had to sneak it in somehow. I'm sorry, this is a spokesman for the Dallas Police Department yesterday evening.
That the gun did not come through during regular intake time, so it was not a failure of our staff, of our protocols, or of the machinery that we have. It did not come in through regular intake.
And then another continuing thread that just can't be let go when you talk about this story is how odd it is that this is the second shooting in just 1 year for the same high school.
And this is the second time in about a year there's been a shooting there.
Police had been searching several spots, but overnight the suspect turned himself in. Right now, investigators are trying to figure out how that gun made it into the school.
Okay, so that's a real big one because you can't remember a high school that's had 2 shootings. However, let's talk about this term school shooting, because what we usually mean in these national stories that capture all of our attention in school shooting is someone who goes in there and just starts indiscriminately shooting people. I'm talking about a Virginia Tech. I'm talking about a Uvalde. I'm talking about the Sandy Hook. This isn't that. This is some guy comes in and he's not paranoid schizophrenic. He's not hearing voices. He doesn't have a manifesto. He's not especially angry at the world or certain subgroups within the world. This is a guy who's angry at one person. And so whether it's over drug beef or a girl or he got disrespected, he was actually targeting one person. So that's different than what we usually consider under the umbrella definition of school shooters and school shootings. Other thing that makes it different is that this guy actually tried to escape. How many of these school shooting guys, they either do the suicide by cop, or when the cops show up, they turn the gun on themselves, or they surrender when they run out of ammo, which like happened in Aurora, Colorado. This wasn't that. This was a guy who was not out of his mind. He's just a future criminal who finally made the leap into a present day criminal with this act. He tried to get away. And so now it's not some psycho mental health episode. This is just regular old street violence that happened to spill over into a school. So do we have to have a chat about mental health in this country? Do we have to have a chat about the availability of therapy and psychotropic drugs and things like that? Nope, that doesn't fit this one. So let's start having some adult conversations. KP in KC, Texas is how he's styled over on X. KP says, "Do we know how he got the gun and whose gun it was?" Ooh. Now, when KP says that, you're probably thinking what I'm thinking. Remember last year, or maybe was it 2 years ago? There was a school shooting in Michigan, and I think last year his parents got convicted for allowing their kid, a minor, to have such easy access to a gun because it therefore facilitated the shooting at the school. Was these mom and dads going to get the same treatment? Is there a mom and dad? I mean, the only statement I saw from the guy yesterday was his aunt. That's a bad sign. But yeah, this is something that came up when we were talking about this last year. What about these parents? What about the parents of all the other minor criminals who are out there committing crimes with guns? All right, do they ever get held accountable? Kevin emailed me, james@wbap.com, said they're looking at this all wrong. It's not what can we do about the doors or cameras. These are the kids that slap teachers and bully other kids at school, want to be gangsters at home, and no one has corrected them. It all starts at home where someone teaches you how to act and treat others. And I like that. It's just not comfortable for a lot of people to admit, because that's not a problem you can fix with the metal detector. That's not a problem you can fix with clear backpacks. And they were told that, and they didn't want to believe it. So they did the metal detectors. They did the clear backpacks, and we still have the shooting. So clearly the problem isn't the lack of security at the schools. Clearly something's going on with the households that are producing the killers. I don't think they're ready for that conversation yet, but we are. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up, more details on the school shooting with Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, hockey fans, have you downloaded and added to the fun of the hockey playoffs with the Prize Picks app? And listen, if you're a big fan of the Dallas Stars, so is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a proud partner of the Dallas Stars. Thank you very much, Prize Picks, for your support as they're going to make another great run in the playoffs. And you're going to be watching it. You're going to be keeping up with all the players and all the games. You might as well take that knowledge that you have of hockey and turn it into some cash. And let me tell you how easy it is. You could go to your favorite goalie, say Ottinger, and in his next game, 21 and a half saves. Will he have more or less? That's all you got to do. Boom. So that's one square. Maybe you're a transplant or you have a second favorite team that's in the playoffs. You can have a little bit of fun with them too. You could say, I'm sorry, Jake Ottinger was 25 and a half. You could say Stuart Skinner. Is he going to have more or less than 21 and a half goalie saves in his game? He plays for Edmonton. So that's all you got to do. You make a lineup of 2 to 6 players. You can win up to 2,000 times your money with America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, Prize Picks. Over 10 million users. I'm one. Over $1 billion in awarded prizes. I got a couple pennies out of that. And you can try it out. If you're just learning, do it with our money. Download the Prize Picks app. Use promo code WBAP, and you get a $50 promo cash with your first $5 game. So download Prize Picks, use the promo code WBAP, and get $50 to play with on us after your first $5 game. Prize Picks. Run your game. Well, hey there. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We're talking about the Wilmer Hutchins High School shooting from yesterday. We now have a guy in custody, and we're learning a little bit more about the story and the situation. And here to fill in some of the details, the great Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express, who's been doing a lot of good work with local news lately. Put him on your regular rotation. Chris Putnam. One thing I find that's missing from the story is I don't see a motive anywhere. Do we have any insight on that yet?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything either, James. Actually, kind of the thing about the story that struck me so far is not even the incident itself, although there's a lot of questions about it, obviously, particularly since, there seems to be a lot of finger pointing about how this kid got a gun into school when they had metal detectors. But have you considered this yet? The bond for this kid who shot 4 people, none of them are dead, but he shot 4 people, $600,000. The bond on our friend in Frisco, $250,000, and a kid is dead. How does that make sense?
It definitely doesn't. A lot of this isn't going to make sense. But, we all remember last year that this happened. And I remember having the debate here on WBAP where people calling in, they need to do metal detectors. They need to do clear backpacks. Well, they did that and it didn't work. So I think a lot of us were proven right. And some people were unfortunately proven wrong. But do you feel like there's any blame for the security protocols at the school?
Look, if the security protocols at the school aren't being followed, which is, I believe, what's being reported here, that there was a mistake or something, then what's the point? And, look, I think it's incredibly ironic that tomorrow in the state legislature we're going to have a vote on school choice. Because I just look at this in the context of everything else we've been dealing with, right? The pedo epidemic in our public schools. And, I mean, it's literally every single day there is another public educator arrested for sexually assaulting a child every day.
Yep.
I have a database of convicted felons that are working in our public schools, and then there's stuff like this, just this violence. And if you actually know anything about how most of these government schools operate, it's like any other bureaucracy, James. They're government employees. This is just mailing it in. And I'm sure that's what happened here with the security situation as well. And look, there's criminals everywhere. There's criminals at our schools. There's criminals, walking the streets. But if you're going to spend all this money to try to actually protect our kids and then not follow the protocols, what's the point?
Yeah, and I'm glad you focused on the school choice aspect here because there's 1,000 kids at that school. And I bet you 900 families wish that they could send their kid to a different school or a better school or at least have an option. But they don't. They're
By the way, right on. So this is actually the most important choice about school choice. And I did not come on to evangelize about that today, but
it's a good answer. It's a good response to this. Yes.
The children in our government schools that are suffering the most are the most economically disadvantaged. They have no choice. They are trapped in these awful, awful schools like in Fort Worth ISD, where there's a 4% passing rate on literacy tests. 4%. It is time to change everything and give these kids a legitimate alternative so we can rescue them from a lifetime of poverty and crime.
Well, I also like to take the focus on for the people who are trying to improve the security there. They added metal detectors. They did the clear backpack. And the gun, the kid got in with the gun through a side door. One of his friends opened a door that's locked from the outside, I think is the assumption we're all making from the details here. So no matter.
By the way, can I stop you there because it's so funny because my kids went to Grapevine Colleyville High School. We had an incident there several years ago where they made the same excuse. There was a kid in the cafeteria waving a gun around when they had all these security protocols. Like, oh, he got through a back door. He was literally waving a gun around on Instagram in the school cafeteria.
Sad. Well, listen, look at the schools that don't have violence problems and don't have shootings and don't have these issues. Is it because they have metal detectors, Chris? Is it because they have clear backpacks? Or is it because the things that are happening outside of the school are making all the difference? And look, I feel the frustration from some people here because if you take my view of it, there's not a whole lot the school itself can do. You can't just sit around as a community and say, well, we added some metal detectors and clear backpacks. they should be safe now. No, it's going to be a lot harder work than that.
I'm honestly angry, and look, we just watched this for too long. These kids, these poor kids, they're all from economically disadvantaged and minority communities. They are trapped in these awful, awful government schools. And then you have people lecture us about how that's the only possible alternative. That's the only possible alternative for our tax money is to trap these kids in the same failing system year after year after year and give them no future because they don't have a choice. They can't homeschool. They can't afford private school. And I hate, but in Republicans too, when they twist this narrative to make it sound like vouchers or any form of school choice is a reward for private school families or for rich white people. That's not what we're solving here. And this is just another example. I'm angry about it. And I actually pray that they make the right decision tomorrow because whether it's perfect legislation or not, it is time to change because this is not working.
You know what I had to do that was kind of sad before the show started, Chris? I had to go to Give Sin Go, and I just wanted to check to see if anyone had started a fundraiser for the suspect, the 17-year-old suspect in this shooting, Tracy Haynes. And so far there's not, but, are they going to raise $500,000 for him? Is he going to get to move into a new $900,000 house too? And
It's ridiculous.
Get a fresh, something's going on here. And
we're going to turn we're going to turn that whole thing into some fake hate social justice cause too. And that's another thing I'm just sick of. Like we had this situation with this guy, Tony Ortiz, my buddy Tony Ortiz,
Current Revolt.
Yeah, great guy. Reported today this guy, I can't remember what town he was in, but literally goes and creates a fake hate website on himself.
Hang on, Chris.
Racial division.
Can I hit pause on my DallasExpress.com remote here and we continue after the break?
Yeah, of course.
All right, kind of running over time here. Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express. We're just discussing the latest details in the tragic shooting at Wilmer Hutchins High School yesterday, and kind of comparing that also with the school the incident that happened in Frisco with the student being stabbed to death and the response to that. We have a lot to talk about here, so stick with me. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. There's a good one. We're continuing with Chris Putnam from DallasExpress.com, spelling out more information that we've learned about the Wilmer Hutchins High School shooting from yesterday. We now have a 17-year-old suspect identified as Tracy Haynes in custody. He was booked last night, Dallas County Jail, around 9:30. So far, his only charge is aggravated assault mass shooting. I think there may be some more charges to come. But according to online jail records, his bail has already been set, $600,000. Chris, I want to have an uncomfortable little moment here. And I want to compare this to the Frisco stabbing here. Because if you look at this kid who goes into the high school and kills or attempts to kill a fellow student, you know, when we talk about motive, we don't know yet, but we can kind of spitball. Maybe someone grabbed his arm, Chris. We learned that it's okay if someone slightly pushes you or grabs your arm. That could be a pretext for homicide.
Or ask you to leave their tent.
Yeah, something to that effect. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. No, I don't. You know, look, I'm back to the bail thing. Because that's the thing today that's just blowing my mind, you know. And there's a lot of stuff going around on social media comparing like the situation with, the bail with the Frisco stabber to Jason Rittenhouse, right?
Kyle Rittenhouse.
I'm sorry, Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah, $1 million bail, right? The guy was totally innocent. You know, this kid had $1 million bail. They take it down to $250,000, which is $450,000 less than this kid that actually didn't kill anybody, although he shot 4 people. I mean, why are these kids getting bail at all? That's my question. These people are like shooting people in schools and stabbing them in the heart, and we're letting them out in jail back on the street. How insane is that, James?
Yeah, well, there's the lesson from that is what's going on with our judges. How are we all okay with this? I like the other lesson you brought up in the last segment, because that was on my little bullet points of things to get to today. And you know, how strong of a case does this make for school choice? Something that's being debated in the state house right now. But I also wanted to
by the way, I think there's things every day from some school district in Texas, or more than one school district in Texas, that should have already made the case for school choice. Again, if you just, we actually did a series of stories that actually inventoried the scale of the pedo problem, you know, in our Texas public schools. We always hear the one-off stories, right? This one in this district, this one in this district. It's huge. It's hundreds. And again, there's a new one every single day. And you know that's actually adults just sexually assaulting children. Not to mention, you know, people that are actually felons that are serving as educators in our school. And I don't know if you do this, but there's certain laws that allow school districts, if an employee has actually been accused of a crime, they don't necessarily have to report to the police. They have to report it up through, you know, the various, you know, teacher unions, but not necessarily to the police. It's crazy.
Well, at some point, do we have people come off the idea that metal detectors actually work and make people safer, or make our kids safer? Because, you know, I appreciate the effort. I realize it comes from good intentions, you know, but if you're focusing your time and your energy and your money and your resources on things that aren't helping, that's not a good thing. You need to redirect.
To me, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, James. And to me, it's very analogous to what happened after 9/11, right? And with Department of Homeland Security and with TSA. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, if you spend any time in an airport and dealt with TSA, the terrorists won. We lost. We lost some basic civil liberties at the expense of, you know, 11 guys, because we overreacted, because the government solution is almost never the right solution.
Well, I think that's a good comparison too, because it's been 24 years and the TSA has caught 0 active terrorists, absolute 0 active terrorists. Now, they've confiscated more guns than any other federal program in American history, and I think that counts for Wounded Knee even.
A little bit of a left turn here, and I understand that, but I used to fly a lot globally, and one morning at like 5 o'clock or 6 in the morning, I'm at TSA pre, and I'm looking, it's just me and one other guy, and I'm looking through the scanner, and Roger Staubach's being patted down by a
Jesus
TSA agent.
Lord!
And I look up at Roger, and I just laugh. And he looks at me and he shakes his head. And I said to the TSA, I'm like, do you know who that is? Do you know what you're doing? That's Captain America. I'm like, you don't get to do that.
I had never
that's-
heard that story. All right, good stuff. This is Chris Putnam, Dallas Express. I can't tell you enough. Put that on your regular rotation for local news. 800-288-9227. This is Linda in Fort Worth. You're on WBAP. What do you think about this school shooting?
Hi, Chris. I think it's
James.
another. Yes. Hi, James. I think it's another of the 428 school shootings since Columbine that we still say at the same after every single one. Why did this happen? And then we keep doing the same thing over and over. And Chris is so right in what he was saying about how it's teachers and administrators. You know, you walk into a school today and it's a very uncomfortable situation. I go into school a lot for the work I do for a university, a local university, watching some interns, and it is scary to hear what teachers say to kids, even scarier what admin says to kids. And think of those kids, like you were saying a little bit ago, that maybe don't have the parent support at home. And, you know, it's one thing to blame parent. Even if we did that, that's not going to solve anything. But when kids go to school each day, we have them for 7 hours a day. And what if teachers and admin learned how to talk to them in a way that was nonviolent, that was non-accusing, and instead of teaching them this is how you settle things, we taught them differently, and I think it could happen.
So you think it would help if we had training for teachers on de-escalation methods where they talk like the people from NPR so they don't spook them?
Exactly. Because if not, I mean, we're just making things worse.
Yeah, I think you're still dealing with the symptom there. I think the fact that you have kids that are willing to pop off and go homicidal to begin with really puts the teacher's tone of voice as not even a top 10 priority there. The schools that don't have these issues, the schools that don't have violence, that don't have shootings or kids sneaking in guns all the time, is it because their teachers are talking to them in an NPR tone, or is it because they have a more stable household where they're being raised by both of their biological parents?
They're talking to them with the NPR tone. Let me tell you about a school that exists in Austin, Texas. It was formed by Austin Public Schools about 15 years ago for, quote, the throwaway kids, the ones that got thrown out of schools, had babies, were homeless, went to jail, and came back. This school has 80% at-risk kids. Every teacher, every staff member in that school, and including the principals, have been trained in something called solution-focused counseling. Every single one. They have 80% graduation rate. They have no discipline issues at all.
Well, that sounds incredibly optimistic. I remain skeptical, though. I would still prefer my kids go to the schools that don't have the killers that are sent there, whether or not they get spooked by their teacher's tone of voice. But I'm not saying you're wrong, Linda. That's new. 800-288-9227. Is there anything that can be done about this? I'll add a couple to the list when we get back on what I think could not fix this, but at least kind of push it in the right direction. But if you have anything you want to add to the list, 800-288-9227. Ooh, I see big, bad black conservative on hold. We'll probably take him next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Now that we know more about the school shooting that happened yesterday, Wilmer Hutchins here in Dallas, let's talk about what can we do about it. How can we keep our little kiddos safe as they go to school? Do we even have to worry about such things? 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I think there's a limit to what schools can actually do about this. I know that's not a fun thing to say and doesn't make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, but there was a speculation for when they added metal detectors after last year that people who share my worldview said that's not really the solution. Clear backpacks aren't the problem. The other schools where we don't have violence, where we don't have kids shooting each other in multiple instances here, it's not because they have clear backpacks. It's not because they have metal detectors. It's because they have something that a lot of the kids in the less safe schools seem to lack, at least proportionally. Not all of them, obviously. I know I'm speaking in generalities, but let your guard down. Let's not be too sensitive here. What they really need, the big difference, dads. And that's going to break some hearts because there's not a government program that can replace a dad. Metal detectors are not an adequate replacement for dad. Clear backpacks have shown to be inadequate into replacing the safety that comes from your kid sharing a school full of students who, generally speaking, have dads. 35% of boys with a present biological father obtain a college degree. Just 14% of boys who do not have a present biological father obtain a college degree. Fatherless boys are about twice as likely to have spent some time in jail before they reach the age of 30. Twice as likely to be criminals. You hear that? Children brought up in single mother homes are 5 times more likely to commit suicide, 9 times more likely to drop out of high school, 10 times more likely to be addicted to chemical substances, 14 times more likely to commit rape for the boys, 20 times more likely to end up in prison, not jail, prison, 20 times. So now we're talking about not criminals, we're talking about serious crimes, violent crimes. So what do you do about that? Well, nothing at the school level. It's too late at that point. What do you think the solutions are? Because if you take my worldview, then you got to start saying, okay, well, is there anything we can do to lessen that? Well, stop subsidizing single parenting. Stop making it lucrative to be raising kids in a single house, whether it's subsidies through government programs or civil subsidies, air quotes, through very generous child support laws. And maybe we need to take a look at how we divvy up custody and assets during a divorce or something like that. But it's not metal detectors, I can tell you that. 800-288-9227. Ooh, we got a lot of callers. I want to do Kay and Grapevine. You're on WBAP. What do you think we should do?
Well, I was just talking about why we always are told by politicians that we need to have a conversation about one thing or another, whatever they think the solution is. But you're right. It's not the schools. It's too late then. And it's whoever is teaching these children or not teaching them morals, and whoever is teaching them that hatred and I'm going to get them is the answer. It is not the answer to anything.
Yeah, well, that's not something a politician is going to
themselves. Unfortunately, that is sad.
Yes, but Kay, what you're bringing up are cultural issues. There's not a policy that can be changed. There's not a law that needs to be changed. Some communities are going to have to look inward and say, why are we doing such a poor job raising kids who are violent?
Yes, but if you do try to have the conversation, they'll tell you you're a racist.
Well, then we have to be better at working around that, because I'm not making the blanket statement that this is a problem within the black community. I am saying this is a problem within a specific subset of all communities, and that's fatherless homes. You know, white people who come from fatherless homes follow those statistics too. They're 20 times more likely to end up in prison than a black kid who is raised with his biological father present. See, this is what I like about these statistics, is that they are race neutral. The problem isn't the color of your skin. It's not even your culture, because it's not, you know, the Uncle Phil's and Carlton Banks from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that are shooting up schools. It's no black females that are shooting up schools. And when we go to look in adulthood, when there's a drive-by or this guy that got shot on Harwood a couple days ago, it's never a black guy in a suit. It's never an old black guy. What we have is not anything that's race specific. It's father specific.
But they're not even going to allow you to say that. Because
Well, I'm
you
saying
bring
it
up
until I get
fathers-
fired. How about that, Kay? That's all I can do.
No, I mean,
I know.
they're
Let me
not
take some more
gonna allow
calls.
you to say it in the halls of Congress.
All right, Kay, I'm going to
That's
run.
what I'm
Thank
talking
you.
about.
Mark, Hillsboro, what do you think we should do?
Well, I called about the reporter that talked and made the comment that the 900 kids from Wilmer Hutchinson would be able to go to private school if we have
School vouchers, school choice. Yes, that was me.
Yeah, and that's not so. They're not going to be able to pay for with $10,000 to go to private school. It's the ones that are already paying private school are going to get a reduction. Also, I'm an educator for over 40 years.
And so you have a vested interest in being against school vouchers. I get it. That's an inane argument. Maybe all of them wouldn't be able to afford it just on the $10,000 alone. But maybe if there's a school out there that's 20,000, they can't afford it. Maybe if they get 10,000, they can come up with the other 10,000. Or maybe it's 15,000. Or maybe it's 11,000, and they only have to come up with a little bit a month. How about we at least help them get there? And how about we at least have them give them the option of making that decision themselves, and not having Mark in Hillsboro just shut the door on them because, well, there's rich people that might benefit from this too, so we can't let you benefit from it as well.
Well, I would. He also made the comment.
No,
that
I made the comment.
No, I'm talking about your reporter when you was talking to him.
Okay.
That with the government got involved in 9/11 and they went too far.
Yes.
And I still wish they'd just put it up for a vote and let the people of Texas decide it. But I did private schools also and public schools.
I got to run. I'm just out of time. Thank you very much, Mark in Hillsboro. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hello, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome back to the big show. My next guest, I hope he's going to be a regular caller. I kind of like his stuff on social media. His name's Stephen Carrollton, but he goes by Big, Bad, Black Conservative. Welcome back to the James Show. Steve, your thoughts on the Wilmer Hutchins high school shooting?
What's going on, Mr. Parker? I'm glad you took my call. I was getting concerned there. I said, all these people are eating up my shine, man. I'm never going to make it big.
The floor is yours, Steve. Go ahead.
Thanks. First thing first, I've heard this several times today on different radio shows all day long. And the first thing is about the $1 million bond that the kid in Frisco got. And they said, oh, it was a $250,000 bond, and he killed a kid. The other one, $600,000, and he only shot people.
Right.
But the reality is that's not the reality. The reality is it was $1 million bond for shooting a kid, for killing a kid, and $250,000 for shooting him. And that'll probably end up being reduced, or $600,000, I'm sorry, for shooting him. And that'll probably end up being reduced down to something less than $250,000 because it was something less than murder. Do I agree with it? No, but that accuracy is important to me when it comes to putting these details out there.
Yeah, maybe we should refine that criticism after the Bell hearing.
Yeah. After they reduce it down to we'll release you on your own recognizance.
Right. Yeah, don't have something else to complain about.
Yeah. Now, but the other stuff you were talking, and your question was, how do we fix it? Teachers. I wrote some of the stuff down while I was on hold, so forgive me if it gets too boring. I'll
go ahead.
Cut it short. The teachers and the administrators don't treat kids as well as they should, because one of your callers were saying, well, it's because the teachers don't treat the kids right.
Mm-hmm.
But they do that because the doors are locked. There's no chance that I'm going to be walking through the hallways and hear Miss Jenkins screaming at the kids and calling him or her out of their names, because the doors are locked. I mean, I can't even get in to watch one of my kids' classrooms myself. So, of course, the teachers are going to mistreat the kids. That's not to say that all teachers are bad.
Now, I like that because that feels counterintuitive to a lot of people listening, but locking down the schools may actually have a negative impact on school security. I remember, because they've been doing metal detectors in schools, Steve, since at least the 90s, since like Dangerous Minds and all those movies were coming out. Yep. And are those schools much safer now? Absolutely not. And the ones that don't have the problems, do they have metal detectors? No. So turning your schools into sort of a low grade prison has proven not to work. And Steve, I don't know what your school was like growing up, but every once in a while you would go to class and someone's mom would just be in the back observing.
Yep. And it made the teacher probably less comfortable, but it may have made the teacher more comfortable. I don't know, but I do know that if I am an employee, if my boss is sitting there watching me do the thing, it makes me a little more nervous, but I do a better job doing it. Or at least I do my best.
Good point. No one has said that. So, hey, right now, Steve's up to 7 points, Garrett. All right, I just added 7. All right, next point.
So I'm looking at, you said, what can we do to fix it? Straight male teachers. Since getting dads in is not an option, they're gone for 10,000 different reasons. But straight male teachers, instead of all these people who are not upholding values of historically normal or good society, if we put those straight male teachers back in the classrooms, instead of pulling them out. Well, first of all, guys usually don't even teach anymore. But those who do,
Steve, how
push them to the district level?
Is there something we're doing to disincentivize male teachers? Because I think they're just not choosing these jobs. Something like 78% of public school teachers are women, and the numbers are even more stark when it gets down to the elementary level. But I think guys are choosing. We just don't want to be elementary school teachers. Are you saying we need to incentivize this somehow? And how do we do it?
I'm saying that we do need to incentivize it, but I'll tell you one of the reasons why we don't, or why men are not doing it. One of the reasons is because of all the sexual assault harassment and other claims that they have the ability, especially in the era of, blame all women, or not blame.
Believe all women. Yeah.
So guys like, you know what, hands off. I'll just go to the factory, or I'll go do some engineering stuff, or well digging, or whatever it is they want to do that gets them out of that potential situation.
So society treating grown men as potential predators at all times does kind of push them away. I can see that. That's probably a field goal. Another 3 points for Steve. Go ahead.
But you look at you also have like I said earlier, every male teacher that I personally know was in the classroom for a couple years, maybe, and almost immediately they were put into administration level at the school. And almost the next year, they were taken all the way out of the school and moved up to the district level. What does that do? That eliminates him from the school. It eliminates him from the classroom. So the good that he could have done, the guys that actually are in education, they aren't even in education. They're at the district level somewhere theoretically influencing policy. But if there are no guys at the local level, it doesn't do anybody any good.
All right. Well, these are all good points. Steve, this is the conversations we need to be having. Thank you for calling in from Carrollton, sir. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks. Bye.
Big Bad Black Conservative on several social media platforms. I think it's misspelled on one of them, but he already got enough grief for that. Coming up next, where in the world is Chris Van Hollen? You have a member of Congress who's going on a special mission to try and bring back an MS-13, easily confused there. Hey, just because he's a member of a dangerous, violent Salvadorian gang, and just because he's wrapped up in domestic assault, just because he beats his wife, just because he's involved in human trafficking, doesn't mean we can't illegally sneak him back into our country, damn it. We'll talk about immigration coming up next. Where in the world is Chris Van Hollen on The James Show? News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Lots going on with immigration these days. We have the couple of big stories that are catching a lot of national attention. Mahmoud Khalil, the guy who got deported after the Colombia protests. We also have what's going on with the Garcia fella down in El Salvador, and you have a congressman going and visit him, Chris Van Hollen, today. But there's a lot of smaller, lesser-known stories out there that are being affected by new immigration policy. Number one is a handful of students have had their visas revoked. Let's talk to my next guest. Susha Modi is on the James Show. And tell me a little bit more about this. Who all has lost their student visas, and what was the pretext for it, Susha?
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me. Actually, a lot of individuals have had this. We've had a lot of consultations about it. AILA, American Immigration Lawyers Association, has estimated that about over 4,500 students have had their status terminated. And this is a big deal. This is unprecedented. You know, I've practiced almost 15 years immigration law, and there's a distinction between the visa, like a student visa, which could be revoked. That's mostly for traveling.
Okay.
And the actual status itself being terminated with like no notice, no deportation proceedings or anything. It's just terminated in a.
So what's that one called? There's the one student visa for traveling, I guess, if you wanted to come here and just visit, take some pictures and leave, and then versus actually going to school here. Do I have that right?
Not exactly. So for coming here, that's a visitor visa.
Okay.
And for studying, it would be a student visa, but that's like outside the U.S. coming in. What we have going on now is people that have been approved student visas, like students here going to school, and then without any notice, like no immigration court hearings or anything, no notice at all, no real due process. They just get alerted from their school that their status has been terminated on an online program called SEVIS. And we're getting a lot of these calls. And like I said, it's unprecedented. It hasn't really been done like this before. The visa could be revoked, but not the status. The status itself, you usually get a chance to, an opportunity to respond, due process, court hearings, things like that.
So what's the difference between the visa and the status?
Visa is really used for travel. The status is when you're already here, like you have legal status in the U.S.
Okay.
And that's what's happening is they're just waking up one day without any process or anything, and then a notification from the school that their status has been terminated. It's really appalling.
So what students are having their visas revoked? Are we talking about students who have participated in protests or are part of certain groups, or do we even know?
It seems to be a broad swath of students. So, for example, we've done a bunch of consultations with individuals with incredibly minor crimes. Like they wouldn't even, the crime would not even trigger what's called a deportability ground. So they wouldn't even be put in immigration court for it. Like one example was a lady in a PhD program who had a DUI that was dismissed, not even convicted, like dismissed, many years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. And now, while she's in the PhD program, she's just told that her status has been terminated.
So what's happening to these students? Do they have to leave and then appeal their decision or reapply? Is there any appeals situation? I don't know what the next step is.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So, they have a couple of different pathways. One is something called student visa reinstatement that they could apply for with the government to get their student status reinstated. The problem with that is, one, it goes to the government, to USCIS, the immigration agency. Two, it takes a long time. It could take 6 to 9 months with all these recent issues of everybody else filing for these student visa reinstatements. You could get a huge delay on that processing time. So there's a couple of problems with it, but that's one option, is the student visa reinstatement. And the second one is a federal lawsuit. And we've seen several lawsuits already be filed. We know of one that's at least been successful with a federal judge, where their status was temporarily reinstituted by a federal judge.
Okay, I think I saw that headline. By the way, we're talking with Susha Modi. He's a local immigration attorney here in Texas. Was this the Dartmouth students that had the successful lawsuit? I just remember a headline. I didn't read the story.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And well, the underlying basis for it was a motion for preliminary injunction, but the basis for it is that it was arbitrary or capricious. So kind of like we talked about, all these students are being, put in together, even if they have, little or no criminal history, even if the criminal history isn't a ground for deportation proceedings, even if the criminal matter was dismissed, meaning they were never convicted. So all these individuals have just had their status terminated. And so one of the legal arguments could be, is it arbitrary the way that the government's going around doing it and without due process? So immigrants still have a right under the Fifth Amendment for due process. So and that individual was successful in getting his status reinstituted. There's several other lawsuits pending across the nation. And I think there's also a class action being looked at as well.
All right. So if you're a student that had your visa revoked, what's the first thing you need to do, Modi?
Definitely, they need to contact a good immigration attorney. Because
do they have to go home and contact an immigration attorney, or do you recommend they stay here and try and get it done on U.S. soil?
That's a great question too. If they leave, they actually cannot file a student visa reinstatement. So they could be hurting their chances for a student visa reinstatement in that sense if they leave. The other issue is if they leave, there could be jurisdictional issues with the lawsuit, like whether they have standing and things. So the two potential chances they have here that we're currently talking about, it's likely that they're going to need to be in the United States to fight their case.
A lot of us are looking at this from the outside. Native-born folks like myself are saying, you don't participate in any of these protest movements, and you actually just go to school and worry about your grades, and maybe you can duck some of this criticism. Is that something you would recommend as an immigration attorney?
Well, we've done a lot of consults this week on this particular issue, and none of them actually had protests.
Interesting.
They weren't involved in any of the protests. This just seems to be like a broad swath. Maybe they're using an AI agent or something.
Just anyone with a criminal background or a violation, or do some people have completely clean records and we have no idea what it possibly could be?
I think several of them could have a criminal issue, but it was completely dismissed, or it was so minor that it doesn't even trigger deportation proceedings. So it seems to be that they're just trying to figure any trigger out. And then I've heard of other immigration attorneys that have had consults that have no criminal history. So quite inefficiently done. Almost all the consults I've had, and I've had a lot in the last week, have had criminal issues either that were not convicted, like dismissed, or the criminal issue was so minor that it wouldn't even trigger a deportation case.
Interesting. All right, Susha Modi, I appreciate your expertise. He's an immigration expert here in Texas, and thank you for being on the James Show.
Hey, it's my honor. I hope to have you guys to be back on it. There's a lot of news going on with immigration these days, and I hope this was informative to your audience, okay?
Yep, it's immigration has been coming up quite a bit lately, so thank you, Susham. Your thoughts, 800-288-9227, because coming up next, we have a congressman who is having a fun little trip, a vacation almost, to El Salvador today. He's doing a bunch of selfie videos on the way, documenting every step of it. So I'll play some of the audio, and we'll talk about Chris Van Hollen going to El Salvador to rescue the alleged MS-13 gang member from prison. 800-288-9227. I know it sounds weird. That's next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to the big show. We have a lot of people who are enjoying the fact that Chris Van Hollen, a guy in Congress from Maryland, is taking a trip out to El Salvador to rescue an MS-13 El Salvador citizen and bring him back to Maryland. Okay. You'll hear from him in just a second. I need to review a couple things here before we get into Chris Van Hollen's fun little selfie vacation. It was established on yesterday's show that unless 18 people around this situation are lying, this Abrego Garcia guy, the El Salvador dude, he's not a citizen of the United States. He is a citizen of El Salvador. He came here in 2011. In 2019, he got busted and some charges were thrown at him, and it was a bunch of charges. Nothing huge, but a bunch of little charges: human trafficking, domestic violence, things of that nature, on top of the crimes that come with being here illegally. So it was at that point that he claimed asylum because it's too dangerous for him to go back to El Salvador. He risked death. And so our overly generous immigration system said, okay, we'll just let you stay here in Maryland. Now, all of the media has been calling him a Maryland father, but for the couple people who didn't hear the show yesterday, this is when Bukele had stopped and met with Trump in the White House. There's Trump, there's Pam Bondi, the attorney general, there's Stephen Miller behind her. And they all made the case to the media that why would we send this guy back? He is home. He's an El Salvador native and citizen. He belongs in El Salvador. Maybe or maybe not in the prison, but certainly not in Maryland. Here's Pam Bondi from, I guess this was Monday or Tuesday.
Go ahead. Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at
This was Monday. Yeah.
Low-rated. Which one is that? Well, let me ask Pam. Would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us.
All right, so we have a guy who, look, unless a couple of courts got it wrong, it looks like he's a member of the MS-13 gang. It looks like he's been rolled up in crime, in addition to illegally being here for the last 14 years. And so, well, some people see this story and they're like, we got to go rescue the Salvadorian MS-13 gangbanger from El Salvador and bring him back illegally to the United States. I know this sounds like a cartoon that I'm making up, but Chris Van Hollen is visiting El Salvador himself. So don't take it from me. This isn't me saying it. This is Chris Van Hollen saying it. This is from today. He flew down to El Salvador. This is where he's at right now, trying to get this guy out of jail and back in Maryland.
I just landed at the airport in San Salvador a little while ago. I'm now en route into the city, looking forward to meeting with the team from the American Embassy. And I do want to thank our Foreign Service officers and the whole team at this embassy and embassies around the world for all the good work they do on behalf of our country. I'm proud to co-chair the bipartisan Foreign Service Caucus that stands up for the men and women who are serving our country overseas and at home in the State Department. After that, I hope to meet with some high-level government officials from El Salvador. As I've said before, the goal of my visit is to talk to people here about the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I told his wife and his family I would do everything possible to bring him home, and we're going to keep working at this until we're successful. I also hope to have the chance to meet with him, but we'll have a better idea if that works out a little later on.
All right, so there he is, Chris Van Hollen. You know, he put together another selfie before he left, but it was just him in the airport saying the same thing. It's like, dude, we know you left. Why do you have to keep making selfies about every hour and a half to let us know? It's almost like this is a PR stunt.
I'm here at the airport. I'm about to board my flight for San Salvador. The goal of this mission is to let the Trump administration, to let the government of El Salvador know that we are going to keep fighting to bring Abrego Garcia home until he returns to his family.
All right. I found the perfect reply to this, because not only did he say this, it was almost as if he was reading from his Twitter feed, because he tweeted earlier, right before he got off the plane in San Salvador, the capital of El Salvador. I'm going to read you a tweet and then the perfect reply to it, and then I want to hear your thoughts. 800-288-9227. He said, Chris Van Hollen tweeted, I just landed in San Salvador a little while ago. Look forward to meeting with the team at the U.S. Embassy to discuss the release of Mr. Abrego Garcia. I hope to meet with Salvadoran officials and Kilmar himself. He was illegally abducted and needs to come home. Okay, but before you answer, listen to this reply on Twitter from Insurrection Barbie. You might already follow her if you're terminally online like me, but she says, so glad you're in El Salvador to rescue a criminal illegal alien member of MS-13. Too bad you couldn't give the same courtesy to the mother of Rachel Marin, who lives in Maryland, his district, and was brutally murdered and raped by an illegal alien. Did you listen to her 911 call? Do you know how hard she fought for her life? Do you wonder how her kids are doing today? No. Of course you don't, because you are the lowest common denominator. You couldn't be bothered to show compassion or mercy for someone who lives in your own state because it doesn't work for your political agenda. But you have no problem jumping on a plane to rescue some criminal illegal alien because you think that makes you some kind of hero. You are not a hero. You are the lowest form of low, and I will pray for your soul because you will need it. All right, Insurrectionist Barbie. I am floored. We have a sitting member of Congress who's going to El Salvador to try and get an illegal alien member of MS-13 convicted of crimes in the United States, including domestic violence and human trafficking. And you're worried about going and getting this guy out of jail and bringing him back to Maryland? Because what? We missed the new cover sheet on our TPS reports? So concerned about due process. You weren't concerned about the due process for some of our Air Force veterans that loitered through Statuary Hall on January 6th. No, throw them in jail for 2 years without a hearing or bail. Screw those guys. But an MS-13 guy who's not even from here, who's not even an American, I've got to go save him. How backwards is this? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. There's been some concern with the elimination of the Department of Education. Well, in theory, I think technically it still exists on paper. Some people are worried about how that will affect people who get student loans and financial aid through the Department of Education. What's going on there? My next guest may have some answers for you. He's the CEO of Busy Kid, Greg Merced. Welcome to the James Show.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing okay. So if you are a student and you're getting, I know the studio audience is in a good mood today. If you're getting financial aid through the Department of Education, do you have anything to worry about?
Well, just don't sit around waiting for them to just evaporate your loan. That's never going to happen, I don't think. So I think that everybody should be thinking about this. We have $1.8 trillion in student debt. Like, that's insane. And so we've got to be thinking about this. We've got to get kind of people thinking forward to where they want their kids to graduate with little to no debt at all. And what do I need to do to get there? That's what we need to be thinking about.
Okay, so what changes have been made that people need to know about?
Well, not a lot of changes have been made. They always are pushing this FAFSA stuff, right? Get your loan applications in. Always kind of continually doing that. But what we really, I think that the main thing we should do is paint a vision for the next generation. And that should be, like I said, get through school without any debt, and maybe a little if you have to, but don't make it so insane that your kids don't want to go to college, right? You don't beat that drum so hard. But they need to be able to think that way. And honestly, get them involved with the process. Get them thinking about earning money, but also growing their money so that they can kick in for college when the time comes. If you do that, they'll figure it out and they'll get good at it. And then all of a sudden, you're not having to try to figure this out as a parent all on your own.
Well, look, you seem to be a guy who helping people figure out their financial options for college. I am kind of optimistic to see how things would be different if we got rid of the Department of Education altogether. And it's not like we're never going to give anyone any financial aid. It just won't be through the federal government. What does that scenario look like to you, Greg?
Yeah, I think the privatization of that all makes a little more sense to me, for sure. And I think kind of getting the government out of the way is probably a good idea. I think it'll also make...
Well, Greg, a lot of people in your space aren't saying that. They like having the gravy train flow downward from D.C., but you seem to have something closer to my opinion. I appreciate your optimism on that.
Yeah, of course. And I think people should be more accountable. I think this idea of, administrations floating these ideas of we're going to waive your loans or we're going to reduce your loans is nonsense. Like, if they get into the debt, they should pay it off. Period. Kind of end of story for me. I think it's better to not get into it at the first place. There's a lot of amazing trade school options these days. There's a lot of options when it comes to community colleges to kind of start off your college degree. I have one son. He's literally right now taking 25 credit hours. He's a beast. I mean, not everybody can do that.
Jeez.
But he's doing a lot of the stuff online, and he just got accepted to law school, and here he is, no debt, ready to go into law school. That's the way to do it. And if you can do these kind of better options, you can navigate this stuff and not just be insane and get $100,000 into debt.
Well, I've always been interested in seeing what happens if we get rid of the Pell Grants and the Stafford loans and the FAFSA and all the stuff that comes from the federal government, because one of the immutable laws of economics is if you subsidize something, you will either get more of it or you will get a higher price. And we're going to have the same amount of butts and seats when it comes to college next year, whether or not we subsidize it. So it really just makes the price go up, and you can draw a straight line. The amount of money that we've been throwing through the Department of Education at colleges with the increase in tuition, I know it sounds counterintuitive to a lot of people, but getting rid of all this financial aid through government should make the cost of college go down ultimately. Does that sound like crazy talk to you?
It doesn't sound like crazy talk. I think the other thing that it would do, it would get kids more motivated as they're going through the college experience, meaning they should be working. I don't understand how, you can get these grants, you can get these loans, and you don't really have a job and you barely work, if anything at all, and you're driving a BMW. This is crazy. Like, this is totally insane. It would get kids more motivated to get out there, like I did, and work while you're going through college, and a lot. So, yeah, I think you got to align the incentives. If you can do that, it'll probably drive down the price and get people more motivated to get out of college without a huge, millstone around their neck with debt that they're going to have to pay for literally like 30 years. It's just crazy.
Wow, I'm quite pleasantly surprised how much we agree on this. Usually I have to spar with people who are like, well, we can't just withdraw financial aid. No, poor kids will be able to go to college or whatnot. And I always find that incredibly shallow. Thank you very much, Greg Merced from Busy Kid.
You bet.
All right, you can check him out. He has some good apps that may help out your kiddos. BusyKid.com. BusyKid.com. All right, coming up next, looks like we have a couple callers on the student debt issue. If you want to jump in, 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, homeowners. On a long enough time scale, you are going to need a new roof. That is a guarantee for your house. You may not need new windows. You may not need new flooring. You may not need a new throne to sit on in the bathroom, but you will need a new roof. It's just a matter of time. Why wait until it's too late, until there's giant costs? Why don't you catch it early or ahead of time? Get a free roof inspection from Blue Ribbon Roofing. They'll come out there, and if they find anything wrong, we'll talk about how to fix it. If you do need a whole new roof, they can help you deal with the insurance paperwork and filing a claim and then refiling a claim with some extra details in there to get you more money. They'll help you with all that. But if everything's fine, it doesn't cost you anything. I'm not asking anything out of you, and you can get a little bit of peace of mind. So if something does happen to your roof in the future, you now have a baseline set. So it'll help you with your insurance paperwork when you actually need it. So homeowners, do the right thing. If you love your house, if you love the James Show, if you love WBAP, you can help out one of our sponsors and your house at the same time. Go to BlueRibbonDFW.com. And it's not just because he supports us and he's also helping with WeatherCon. It's because it's a family company here in North Texas that does the right thing for their clients. BlueRibbonDFW.com. Hello, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. And pardon me if I'm a little interested in this topic, because I have 4 kids who haven't been to college yet, right? Not only does this affect me, it's going to affect me like getting hit upside the head with 4 different boulders. So, yeah, whatever we can do to sort of arrange society around my needs, that would be perfect. But we're talking about financial aid. We're talking about eliminating the Department of Education and the chaos that some people are concerned about, because we can't get rid of Pell Grants and student loans and privatize them. Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. And we need to have this conversation here before I go completely bankrupt. 800-288-9227. This is Chris in Frisco. Your thoughts?
Well, my thought is this. Why don't the colleges fund the kids?
Explain.
So instead of me having to take my tax dollars and getting no benefit, I'm not getting any interest. The government's getting interest. Why doesn't the college, if you want to go to Yale, why wouldn't the college just finance the kid?
Well, I love that. I think there's a couple of obvious answers for that, and I'm sure you'll have some replies. But let's walk through this, because you're asking some great fundamental questions here. Number one, it used to be like that. We didn't have the federal government who sees the student loan program or even subsidizing them. You know, the student loan whole industry got nationalized under the Obamacare bill for some reason. But I mean, that's when it happened. And before that, they were still subsidizing loans with Stafford loans and stuff like that when I was in college. But the real answer to that is, well, some kids wouldn't get a loan, or some kids, look, the colleges won't get as much money if they do that. If the colleges have to be on the hook for everyone that goes through, how are they going to give out stupid degrees like women and gender studies? How are they going to get worthless degrees out there like underwater basket weaving or post-colonial DEI in Cameroon? Who would get a theater degree under those circumstances?
Exactly my point.
Well, see, now that we've walked through that step, we go to the next logical step that I like, Chris, is if the onus should not be on the government or the taxpayers if you can't pay off your student loan. The real culprit here, the real person you should be angry at, is the college that gave you that degree that obviously wasn't worth the price they charged you for it. You got defrauded by your own college. So why should we pay for it? So, yeah, I love that line of questioning, Chris. That's beautiful.
Well, it's because most kids who graduate from college, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of kids who graduate from college never even use their degree in the field that they got it in.
Oh, we know these stats. Only 44% do.
I didn't know the number that it was that low.
Well, look, there's worse statistics than that. Let me give you the real statistic. So for the people that go, and I don't know what the numbers are for last year. I just done a show a few years ago on this, and I've done the show 1,000 times in the 20 years I've been on talk radio. Of all the people that enter college, there's only like not even half. Is it about half? I think it's about half of them actually finish the 4-year degree. And then once they get it, only 44% of them actually, and when you separate, I think it was 5 or 10 years out from their graduation date, are working in the field in which they got their degree. So it's something minuscule, like 23% of the people that go to college actually end up working in that field with that degree. So like 75% of us are wasting our money on college. I went to college to be a computer programmer, and I can program computers that were here 20 years ago. I don't know if I could even do that job now because technology's passed me by so far. But if I had not spent 1 cent on college, there's reason to believe I would still be in the same seat I'm in now.
Mm-hmm. So I can tell you this, I'm one of 3 sons, 2 parents that have been married together for 60 years. And they both worked 3 jobs to pay for all of us kids to go to school.
Yeah. Well,
they had no student debt.
No, and look, this is another in the long list of government programs that, from my point of view, are just trying to do the job a dad is supposed to do. Just think about all the programs we have for kids that are dad's jobs, like food stamps or free lunch at school. Who's supposed to make sure you have lunch at school? Oh, that's right, your dad. And if you don't have food for your kid during the day, you don't need to go after the taxpayers and say, what's wrong? Can y'all not pay for this? You need to go after the dad and say, what's wrong? Are you starving your kid? No. If you're starving your kid, you shouldn't get a subsidy for starving your kid. We should call CPS and maybe look at taking them away, not subsidizing terrible parenting. But public housing, putting a roof over a kid's head, that's supposed to be a dad's job. After school programs for sports or hobby, or, like playing catch, that's literally one of dad's jobs. So when you talk about, all this financial aid stuff, you're trying to replace the job a dad is supposed to do, which again, just like when we were talking about the Wilmer Hutchins school shooting and all these other school shootings and violent crime with our youth, a lot of this comes back to, hey, you don't need metal detectors and clear backpacks. You need dads. That's what the safe schools have. Dads. That's what the schools with high academics have. Dads. Can we try dads? Kevin in Carrollton, if that's not too toxic for you, you're next up on WBAP.
I just think our federal government makes it way too easy to go grab this money. Case in point, I graduated high school in the mid-'90s. I got a football scholarship, and I'm here to tell you that every athlete that I know in football and basketball still applied for all these grants and all these loans, and they still got them. Although our room, our board, our books, our tuition, everything was paid for. But when those loans deposited in their account, the new video games, the new clothes, the new shoes, it was just a money grab, and I just don't understand it.
Well, it's the same thing you see with Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, USA, Department of Education. Once it goes into the hands of the government, there is no more incentive for efficiency or judicious use of your scarce resources. Waste, fraud, and abuse is not only the norm; it's incentivized.
You make a good point, and I will say this. I made some very bad decisions when I was a young man, and I lost my scholarship.
No.
Right? Okay.
You're talking to another guy who lost his scholarship. So, yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. So, I lost my scholarship because it didn't mean nothing to me because really, it wasn't my money that I was putting up. So, you know what? I got my life together, joined the military. I used my GI Bill. It got exhausted, and I'm currently using Hazelwood Act. So, basically what I'm saying, kind of to agree with what you have, I have more incentive to complete the task at hand if it's something that I paid into or something that I received, such as my military benefits. But when me and some of my friends who were athletes, very young at the time, it's just free money, so we don't give a damn how we spend it.
Well, here's even more eye-opening for those of you who are just concerned about getting your education, getting these kids' education. You have the entirety of the MIT degree programs online for free. You can go register for it. Hillsdale College does this too, and I've actually taken some of their classes. You can go to college for free now. What you're paying for is the piece of paper the shingle that you can put on your wall that opens doors. But the knowledge out there, it's been democratized ever since the internet came online, and we all know how to use it now. You can go learn. No one's stopping you. Anyone, you, students, adults, people who are looking to retool your skill set for the next career, no one's stopping you from going and learning it right now. These 19-year-olds that are in the Doge team with Elon Musk, who do you think taught them Python when they were 16? Themselves. It's all there. It's all out there. All you got to do is go want to get it. And the rest of this just seems to be a bunch of hokey pokey to keep political activists employed. All these Title IX coordinators and DEI consultants and all these other programs. And think of how many administrators are in a college compared to 20, 30 years ago. It's more than doubled, even though the amount of students has stayed about the same. That's where your problem is. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. And America, we got about 3 years to fix this before my oldest kid goes to college. So let's get working on that. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, we've talked a lot about the school shooting that we had yesterday, immigration, student aid, but we haven't really talked a whole lot about the economy. Let's spend a second and talk about things that are affecting your money, namely the tariffs. My next guest is going to give me an assist with that. Meet Derek Barker. He is the CEO and founder of Nectar. But since this is your first time on the show, Derek, a little bit of your background. You have a nice little backstory here. Give me the 30-second rundown on why we should talk to you about how tariffs are impacting real estate.
Sure. I've been in real estate and finance my whole career. I started buying real estate when I was really a senior at Harvard College. It was right after we were coming out of the great financial crisis. Started with single family, ended up working at Goldman Sachs as a bond trader after college, built a 500-unit portfolio while I was there. Then left full time, began building a portfolio, ended up buying, renovating, selling, developing, asset managing over $500 billion worth of real estate, mostly apartments. And now I run Nectar, and we finance apartment complexes all throughout the country.
Yeah, so like a sort of a mini Donald Trump there, but you went more to the finance side as of late. Now, how has Nectar and your business been affected by the tariffs thus far?
I'd say Nectar's business is pretty unique in that we only we own and invest in stabilized, low leverage, cash flowing assets with permanent debt.
We're talking with a bunch of regular people here. Say that in regular English.
Okay, that's a good point. So we have apartment complexes that are already well occupied, so 90 to 100% occupied, that are already, so they're cash flowing. And the mortgage on our properties, the mortgages are typically pretty low leverage. So let's say 65 or 60% loan to value on the apartments. So in their 10-year, 5 to 10 year terms on the mortgage. So you have a long time before we have to refinance or sell the property.
Okay. So with all that as a setup, we've already heard about people not making moves and waiting until some of this uncertainty settles down. We've also heard about prices going up, whether it's legit, the price of lumber or whatever, or some companies may be using this as an excuse to raise prices. Have y'all seen your activity slow down?
We have not seen our activity slow down specifically, but we have seen changes in the market, definitely. To go a little bit more on that, the number of properties number of projects that can be financed, that make sense financially to buy, renovate, or to build is just down. It's going to be very, very difficult to supply new units or bring new units to market. So that activity is, I'm not going to say 100% gone, but it's just so low. The demand, but that takes a long time to work its way through the economy because it takes a couple of years to go from buying a property to having a fully renovated or built unit on the market. So we're not going to see those impacts for a while. But I will say that demand can move faster in the near term. So this uncertainty, makes people who they were going to move out with their roommate, get into that studio, and they're like, oh well, why don't I just renew this roommate situation? Or they were going to go from a studio to a 2-bedroom, or move out the house, and get to that new apartment. People are just pausing, and there's a little bit of the slowdown in rental demand. For properties that are already occupied, doesn't make that big of a difference. It's the new properties that are being leased up where that has somewhat of an impact.
So how long do you think this will last? Because a popular strain of thought is this could just be a weird convulsion that happens for weeks, maybe months at the latest, and we won't even be thinking about this a year from now. What do you say, Derek Barker?
On the demand side, it's just uncertain. I think there's uncertainty in terms of housing demand, people wanting to move into new units. It's not very clear how long. That's going to depend on a lot of factors. On the supply side, though, this is going to have an impact, period. And it's going to be a long-term, meaningful impact because the costs to build are higher. They just are. Like, we are deglobalizing. The tariffs going on and off are a symptom, not the cause of the deglobalization. And the deglobalization is making costs higher, period. So it's going to cost more to make housing. And with all the uncertainty, lenders and investors, they just pull back too. Like, they don't want to cut a check when they are not sure and when there's uncertainty. And so there are projects right now that would be getting built to deliver in 2 years that are just not going to happen. And that's going to, for a long time, people are going to not be building. And that's going to mean that in a couple of years, we're going to really see that there's just not as much, there's not as many apartments on the market, especially for markets that are growing.
All right, but
the population is going up.
Our population is definitely growing here. So Derek Barker, there's some people that are listening out of the tens of thousands right now that are considering maybe I should take this extra money I have and get a rental property or buy the house next door and rent it out, or maybe build a house and get into the rental game. And is this an incentive for people who are sort of on the fence? You might want to get into this because it's going to be lucrative.
If you have the capital to get in the game and hold on through any short-term volatility, this is a good time. I'd say we are in a market where there are structural barriers to creating supply, and there are structural reasons that demand is going to keep going up no matter what happens in the short term. So if you can be a part of that supply, then it is the winds of the long-term winds of economics are blowing in your favor.
Well, fantastic. Derek Barker, CEO of Nectar, I appreciate you being on the James Show, sir.
All right. Thanks for the time. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, and I know there's some people out there thinking about getting in the rental business. I know you're thinking about maybe when you get your next house, just keeping the old house and renting it out, or maybe doing an Airbnb. And there's a lot of reasons to think that could be really smart when you see what the market looks like in a year, maybe 5 years at the most. Coming up next, we actually have a statement from Chris Van Hollen. He's the congressman that is down in El Salvador working hard to get that MS-13 gang member back up to Maryland. You'll hear his statement from just about 30 minutes ago coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, hey there. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Listen, people, stop sending me the stories about how the kid is and his family are wasting all the money from the defense fund. I'm talking about the stabbing death of Austin Metcalf, the Frisco track meet situation. I'm ecstatic about that. They're like, can you believe that they're renting a $900,000 house and they just bought a $150,000 Escalade? Yeah, I go ahead, waste all that money, please. Burn through it as fast as you can. Don't spend it on lawyers. Don't try and keep your own son out of jail for the rest of his life. Please keep making terrible decisions with the money. But listen, stop sending me that. I'm going to do probably a half hour on it on the show tomorrow. So just let me keep my powder dry and finish a couple more things, because I have some people behind the scenes that are looking all this stuff up, and we're working on a great segment for you tomorrow. The other thing I have is an update here on a story that we've been following, because Chris Van Hollen, your congressman from the Maryland area, has been going after the Maryland father. Haha, Maryland father. That's how some people are styling him. Other people would style him as a domestic abuser, human trafficker, MS-13 gang member, illegal immigrant from El Salvador. But I do admit that's a lot of adjectives. Maryland father, a lot faster. But Chris Van Hollen, he's so concerned about the well-being of this sort of constituent. I mean, he's not even a legal citizen, but, you know, Maryland is his domain. We were playing for you earlier. He was in the airport. I'm going to El Salvador trying to get this guy back. And then he was landing in San Salvador. I'm down here in San Salvador, the capital of El Salvador, trying to get this guy back. And so now he had some sort of meeting, and he came out and talked to the press for a little bit. Well, I'll just play you about a minute and a half of this, and you'll get the gist.
Now, the courts of the United States have said there's no evidence to support the charge that he's part of MS-13. So I asked the vice president whether or not El Salvador has any evidence that he's part of MS-13 or has committed a crime. Yeah. So I asked the vice president if Abrego Garcia has not committed a crime, and the U.S. courts have found that he was illegally taken for the United States, and the government of El Salvador has no evidence that he was part of MS-13. Why is El Salvador continuing to hold him in CICOT? And his answer was that the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, to keep him at CICOT. And I pointed out that neither the government of El Salvador nor the Trump administration has presented evidence to support the claim that he's committed any kind of criminal acts. And so why not release Abrego Garcia today? And he said what President Bukele said the other day at the White House, which that El Salvador can't smuggle Mr. Abrego Garcia into the United States. And I said, I'm not asking him to smuggle Mr. Abrego Garcia into the United States. I'm simply asking him to open the door of CICOT and let this innocent man walk out. And I pointed out that the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, has said that the United States would send a plane to El Salvador to pick him up. And why did she do that? Because the Supreme Court of the United States, in a ruling of 9-0, has said that the Trump administration has to facilitate his return to the United States.
All right, so you get their talking points. At no point does he admit that this guy is an El Salvador citizen, that he was in the country illegally. He has no business being in Maryland. He has no legal right to be in Maryland. No, I don't want you to smuggle in a terrorist. I want you to want to send a plane at your taxpayer expense to go pick him up and bring him through the front door. That's your stance. Brilliant. Yeah, the Trump administration hasn't presented any evidence that he's been convicted of a crime. No, but you can go look up the record yourself. 28 people have already sent me on Twitter links to, hey, here's his court filings from 2019 from both the original court case and the appeals court that both said that they agree with all the evidence that's on the table from informants and tattoos and whatever else, that he is a member of MS-13 and he has committed these crimes, some domestic violence issues. He's tied to some human trafficking issues. Of course, it's already illegal to cross our border and live here for 14 years illegally to begin with, but then also a couple of restraining orders from the girlfriend that he keeps beating. Yeah, the evidence is out there. You just don't want to see it, Chris. You just don't want to. You act like, well, they haven't shown me any evidence. Well, go look it up. Donald Trump's not going to run around with like a Shoney's placemat with all the bullet points on this guy's criminal record. You're going to have to do a little bit of homework yourself, or you can just follow me on Twitter. I've retweeted this stuff, or go follow Sarah, who we need to have Sarah Fields on. That's your reminder, Garrett. Let's try her again. Yeah, it's out there. We've seen the records, or those of us who have looked for, 30 seconds on Twitter have seen the records. Coming up next, though, another anomaly in the current political culture. How is it that AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Jasmine Crockett have become the head of the Democrat movement? Now, they don't have it in title, but they're the titular head of the Democrat movement. They're the most popular candidates going on right now. How is this that they are the front runners for 2028? The liberal whisperer Evan Sayet is going to explain it beautifully next on The James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. One of my favorite guests, the great Evan Sayet, is on the James Show. And this is a guy, the creator of the Unified Field Theory of Liberalism, which I feel like is a cheat code because, Evan, so many of my friends and people who call and write into the James Show are befuddled on how AOC and Jasmine Crockett are the titular heads. They're the most popular Democrats on the scene right now. But that actually fits just in line with the expectations for people who are familiar with your theory.
No, indeed. And one of the things that I write about and speak about all the time is the fact that the Democrat Party never argues in the affirmative. They will never tell you what it is they believe, why it is they believe it, why it is good, how it works, where it has worked in the past. Instead, they will argue only and always in the negative about the alternative. And if you notice at their rallies, at their gatherings, at their protests, it's always about how evil Trump is. It's always about how evil Musk is. And by the way, this is not new. If you go back to my original lecture, I talk about how they were calling George Bush Hitler. They were calling Ronald Reagan Hitler. Their entire argument is that the alternative is so far beyond the pale that you have no choice but to support them. So you don't really need smart arguments to be a Democrat. And you don't need any arguments at all. In fact, they do not argue in the affirmative because if nothing is better than anything else, they have nothing to affirm. And it's funny, I go back to what I consider the de facto anthem of, let's call it ultimately the woke movement, which is John Lennon's Imagine. And even in this song by a nice guy, a smart guy, a decent guy, but even in this anthem, he calls for the destruction of national sovereignties, no countries.
Yeah, not great countries, no countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not let's now think through and make a comparison, side with the good ones and against the bad ones. No, eliminate all. And by the way, that's true of gun control. Let's not separate the good guys and let them have guns and the bad guys and take theirs away. It's indiscriminately taking it away from good and bad because they do not draw a distinction between the two. But in John Lennon's song, okay, once they have destroyed national sovereignties, no countries, and once they've destroyed all moral codes, no religions.
Not great religions, no religions.
That's correct. They make no comparison, and we see this in the Middle East, where you will actually see queers, quote unquote, protesting on behalf of the Palestinians because they simply cannot make a moral judgment about the evils of the Palestinian, the Islamist movement, even though they will kill queers. They will throw them off of buildings, but they will not factor that into their thinking. So once there is no moral codes, once there are no national sovereignties, once there's no longer any property rights, okay, now how does society function? Well, the best John Lennon can do is say, use your imagination. Because they cannot offer anything in the affirmative. And when you go and see AOC and you go to see Bernie Sanders and you go to see the others, their entire argument is that the oligarchy is bad.
Oligarchy,
okay,
yeah.
But what are you going to replace it with? All right, now that you've eliminated what is your plan for what will be? And they have none because they cannot have any.
Right. Name a country out there of the socialist variety that doesn't have a small elite ruling class of oligarchs. And maybe we can have that conversation. But let's also, for people who are new to you and the book and the speech that he referred to, he gave in 2007. And he was sort of using the shield and deflecting the criticism of George W. Bush at the time, who was literally Hitler, and Rudy Giuliani, who at the time was literally Hitler, and the playbook still stands 100% to this day. So now, look, I'm well versed. I've been cycling the news through this for a couple decades now. I think the real candidate they should go with, if they weren't obsessed with the worldview that you so beautifully describe, I think their best candidate would be someone like a Mark Cuban or someone who's accomplished something or does have affirmative concrete plans. He's doing like the Cost Plus Drugs company, and whether or not that turns out to be a success, he's at least trying real things, and he moves out of the theoretical into the practical. And why does he get just no attention from these people?
Well, specifically for what you just said, because when you are operating in the theoretical, you can promise utopia. When you're dealing with the real world, you're often choosing between the lesser of two evils, or, life is rarely the choice between perfectly good and perfectly evil, but it is very often the choice between the much, much better and the much, much worse. And so you have to weigh the costs and the benefits, but the political left doesn't weigh costs and benefits, because if nothing is better than anything else, then there are no meaningful costs, nor are there any meaningful consequences.
And you're going into the great quote that Rush Limbaugh said about that speech that I just referenced in 2007, where Rush Limbaugh made the point that indiscriminateness is a moral imperative. And once you can digest that, the rest of this, so much of this other stuff makes sense. But in 30 seconds here, because I'm about out of time for the show, if you had to call it right now, who the candidates are going to be in 2028, I would say AOC and Jasmine Crockett on the ticket. What would you say?
Well, if today were 2028, I think you've got the inside track. I think they've got the inside track. But things change rapidly. People come out of nowhere. Who thought Barack Obama was going to take the nomination from Hillary Clinton way back then? Let me show my age, but who the hell was Jimmy Carter to come along? So things change. It is so much, much, much too early.
Who was Bill Clinton even? All good points. Evan, I'm just out of time. Listen, if you want his video, email me, james@wbap.com, or send me a Facebook message, and I'll send you the link. It's one of these permanent things. I'll send you that, and I'll send you the Henry Hazlitt Economics in One Lesson, too. All right, thank you very much. That's the great Evan Sayed. I'm out of time for the James Show. Stick around. Mark Levin's coming up next. If you need more James, I'm about to go put up the podcast. Find it wherever you already listen to podcasts, WBAP.com, the WBAP app. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Bob Lavelle, Home Marketing Services. Listen, I see a lot of people are focused on the Federal Reserve and if they're going to lower rates and what the Treasury bonds are doing now, because they want mortgage rates to go down. And I think that's the wrong focus, Bob. I think if you need to get into a house, you need to get out of the rent race. The current interest rate doesn't matter as much now as people think, because if it does go down, you can always refi. If it goes up, you'll wish you would have bought now.
That's true. And you started with rat race, but you know what? Sometimes the rentals out there have rats too. You want your own home. I agree. All right. Look, you had a listener. He listens to you every day. His name is Don. He's a VA, retired guy, 65 years old. And he heard one of our spots, and he had been turned down 2 years ago to get a VA loan. He said he's heard all the ads for all these other folks. I was the only one that he had actually heard say, if you don't qualify, we work with you to get you qualified. He's coming in next Tuesday, which we don't usually see people on Tuesday, but such a nice guy. Him and his wife deserve a house. You know how I feel about my vets, and but he listens to you every day.
Well, I'm glad we were able to help him out. Is this the VA loan we talked about with that has the 0 down option?
It does, and not only that, but when you go with a VA, they do have a VA funding fee which you can roll into it. So basically, like on my last house VA, I moved in $0, and that's the way it should be. 972-392-9595, especially for you vets out there. Bob, also a vet. Be sure to hook you up with a good VA loan. 972-392-9595. Go to blessyourheart.com or 972-392-9595. Thanks again, Bob. Thank you, James. Bye-bye.